All right, I'm Jackie Abanyas live from Fox News headquarters in New York. We're following breaking news out of London right now. One person arrested, several apparently injured after a vehicle once again plowed into pedestrians. Here's some more background. Police say a vehicle hit pedestrians on a road in North London, leaving several casualties, and one person has been arrested. Let's go to Sky News is now following this. Let's listen in.
Finsbury Park Station, excuse me. So as soon as we have more information on that situation, we will, of course, bring it to you. Moving on now, and one of our top stories, at least 2 people have been killed in an attack by gunmen at a luxury resort outside Mali's capital, Bamako. Suspected jihad.
All right, so that was a little bit there from Sky News, but we're following that breaking news out of London where a vehicle has once again plowed into pedestrians. This is something that we're seeing all too often there. Police officers said they were called to the scene on Seven Sisters Road. This was at 12:20 in the morning Monday. The London Ambulance Service said it was responding to the incident. No other details were immediately available. But remember, earlier this month, a van did veer into pedestrians on London Bridge, setting off vehicle and knife attacks that killed 8 people and wounded many others on the bridge and in the nearby Borough Market area. 3 Muslim extremists who carried out that attack were killed by police. Once again, we're following breaking news out of London. I don't know if we have any video that we can show you here where a vehicle has once again plowed into pedestrians. The Associated Press reporting several casualties at this point, but we haven't heard of just how many. We know one person's been arrested. They're saying several people injured after this vehicle went into the crowd. You can see all the people just gathered out there. It's now, let's see, London is 5 hours ahead of us. Here on the East Coast, it's about 8:45. So they're 5 hours ahead of us. This happened at 12:20 their time, something they're seeing all too often in London. We saw earlier this month, 3 men went on a rampage where they took their van, veered it into people on the London Bridge, killing people on the bridge, then getting out of their van. They were at the nearby Borough Market. They had knives and went on a stabbing rampage, killing 8 people in total, injuring dozens more. Just a really scary situation for people there and people throughout the world now. This seems to be kind of a new wave of terrorism, is taking these cars and plowing it into crowds. Hard to believe that we have come this far. We're following this breaking news if you were just joining us here on Fox News out of London, where a car is veered into some crowd of people. We don't know how many people. We are hearing from the Associated Press. They're reporting that there are casualties involved in here, several people injured. This happened at 12:20 London time. They are 5 hours ahead of us. It's 8:45 here on the East Coast. Police are not releasing hardly any other details than that we know, but we know that they are on the scene. Do we know if this is live video? This is not live video. This was taken just a few minutes ago, but they are there on the scene, and we will definitely start learning a lot more about what's happening there as police and the ambulance crew is on scene. This was the crowd. I was listening to Sky News, and they had a witness there saying that it was a large crowd. Looks like they've dispersed now. If this happens to be the exact scene, they've dispersed. But something that they're seeing so often, and it's something we've seen here in the U.S. We've seen it all over. We're going to bring in a guest now, Steve Hilton, former advisor to David Cameron. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. What do you make of this latest round of an attack there?
Well, it's just unbelievable. We're getting ready here in Los Angeles for our show, and it's the second time in 3 weeks that we are facing the prospect of having to report on another terror attack in London. Now, it's much too early to speculate. Of course, we need to say all those things. But just think about how the people of London must be feeling. Just in the last few weeks, there was a story in the New York Times that caused a lot of offense in London, actually. The headline on the article caused a lot of upset. And the headline talked about London reeling from another terror attack. And people said, well, London's not reeling, we're carrying on, we're resilient. Since then, you've had the dramatic general election, which ended in a way that nobody predicted. You had that terrible fire last week, where the death toll just keeps rising, and now you have what looks like another terror attack. And you just think, well, reeling probably does describe how London is feeling right now.
Oh, this is something we're seeing all too often. It seems like these are just soft targets, and that's what people tend to be going after. And to be, in all fairness, we don't know anything besides the facts that we've reported, that this car veered into pedestrians. We don't know what was behind all of this, if it was a terrorist attack, if it wasn't. But it seems to be these soft targets that we have to watch out for. How do we protect those?
Well, yeah, I mean, it has all the characteristics of that. And the thing also that we need to bear in mind is that the authorities in London, as elsewhere, but specifically after the last attack, made clear that people should expect more of this. Because they literally, and if this is in fact confirmed as what it certainly looks like, which is one more in this pattern of Islamist terrorists attacking soft targets in very low-tech ways, if that is the case, then this is something that the British authorities warned about. They specifically said actually I think it was after the Manchester attack, that there were 23,000, this is their number and their word, 23,000 jihadis in the UK, and they were only able to track 3,000 of them. And they absolutely said, we don't have the resources to prevent this from happening. And so that's a really scary prospect for people when it's the authorities saying that. That is not some idle speculation. That's not media commentary. That is I think it was the head of the domestic security services who put that information out there after the Manchester attack.
Steve, if you could just hold on for a second, we're going to tune into Sky News, dip into their coverage, see what they're talking about at the moment there with that London attack, and we'll get right back to you. Don't go anywhere. Let's check in with Sky News right now.
The widest range of entertainment in ultra-high definition.
All right, it appears that they just went to commercial. Steve, are you still there?
I am, yeah.
So I can't help but think of, what are we to do to protect ourselves now? You know, this is just all so common. What do I do if I'm walking on the street with my kids? How do I protect myself from these crazy people? I feel like there's nothing I can do. Is there?
Well, look, I mean, the first thing we've all got to realize is that this is a serious threat, and it's a long-term threat, and it has been brewing for not just for years, but for decades. That's something that we actually explored on this show, on The Next Revolution, a couple of weeks ago. This is nothing new. The ideology that drives the people who do this has been in development since the 1930s at least. And it's the spread of technology and communications and travel that has allowed it, as it were, to become globalized. Now, the real answer to this, the really serious answer to how do we protect ourselves, is actually to fight that ideology in many, many different ways. But there are some immediate practical things that we can do to protect ourselves. But first and foremost, the responsibility, like, for example, just being more alert and all the information and advice we get from the authorities, like if you see something, say something, try and spot suspicious activity and report it. Those are all sensible pieces of advice, and people should pay attention to them. But beyond that, the security services themselves, and this is something that I've argued for the UK, not so much here, where I think that the president has put in place a national security team that takes this very seriously and is really doing the best that they can. But in the UK, I think that actually the fight against this terror threat hasn't been conducted with as much vigor and aggression as could have been the case. And actually one of our guests a couple of weeks ago made that point. So I think that asking regular citizens to fight this on their own, that's just not really the answer. The answer is an immediate security response to what's going on. For example, it's not good enough to say we know that there are jihadis out there, but we can't keep track of them. That is just not acceptable. But longer term, you've got to get into understanding what drives this ideology and fighting it at its source.
If you're just joining us now, we're reporting out of London where one person has been arrested, several people injured. We're hearing by the Associated Press. Police are saying that several casualties as well after a van veered into a crowd of people there. Happened about 12:20 Monday morning, and we're continuing to follow this. Steve, what do you think our president needs to do to protect us home here? What do you think about that travel ban that's been so controversial?
Well, I think the real point about the travel ban was that it was supposed to be temporary, and it was intended as a temporary measure whilst the full security approach that he talked about and his team talked about was put in place, which is extreme vetting. And that is a policy that I think would command widespread support. And actually, the whole idea of the travel ban was that while we figure out how the extreme vetting works, we need to clamp down on visits from just a few countries where we can't be reassured about people getting their visas and passports and documentation and so on, just for 90 days or so while we figure out the extreme vetting. And so I think the real point is, I think the time for the travel ban has almost passed. They may well try and continue with it for political reasons, but actually the real answer is extreme vetting. And so I hope that the president and his team are actually putting that in place now, because that's a good idea, and I think most people would support that idea. We should know the backgrounds of people who come to this country. We should be able to look at their social media, look at what they've been up to, the people they're in contact with, in order to make sure that they're not people who might end up being part of a terror network.
Stephen, I want to make clear, once again, that we don't know exactly what is behind this van veering into the crowd, but we do know that this happened 3 weeks ago, and it's something that sounds all too common and all too familiar there on the London Bridge when we had 3 guys who plowed their van through people on the London Bridge and then got out with knives and stabbed people. 8 people dead. We now have Waleed Faris, Fox News Middle East and terrorism analyst, on the phone. Waleed, what do you make of these latest reports of one person arrested, several people injured, possibly dead, after a van veered into a crowd in London?
Well, unfortunately, we have to say, as usual, when these events happen, especially in London or the UK or in France, when we see those parallels happening, use of a car over a knife, what we need to expect is more information from authorities. So now authorities basically are going to be investigating. But, by now, after all these waves, suspicion is that this could be one of the many attacks that occurred. But we cannot determine that before getting the real information from authorities.
Right. And you can understand that everyone's just on edge following 3 weeks. This happening in London just 3 weeks ago with 8 innocent people now dead. And not only did they take a van into the crowd, they got out with knives and started stabbing people.
It looks like now, not addressing this specific case before getting more information, but if that is the case, it looks like those who have been organizing, those who have been perpetrating, have realized that this is a weak spot in our liberal democracies, because knives, we don't have laws against knives, we don't have specific special laws. Cars, trucks, so they have discovered the weak spot, unfortunately.
That's for sure. It seems it's just soft targets that they're going after now. So scary, so frightening. If you are just joining us now, here on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see video of what appears to be some very big breaking news out of London right now. 1 person arrested, several apparently injured after a vehicle has once again plowed into pedestrians. Police are reporting that there are some casualties. We're working on getting more on that. Just some background for you. Police say a vehicle hit pedestrians on a road in North London, leaving several casualties, and 1 person has been arrested. Metropolitan Police said officers were called there to the scene on Seven Sisters Road at 12:20 a.m. Monday. The London Ambulance Service said it was responding to the incident. No other details were immediately available. We're working on getting those for you. Of course, earlier this month, a man veered into pedestrians on London Bridge, setting off vehicle and knife attacks that killed 8 people and wounding many, many others on the bridge there in nearby Borough Market area. 3 Muslim extremists who carried out that attack were killed by police. So if you're just joining us, that's what we're following right now. And Waleed, are you still there on the phone with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
So this happened, the London Bridge incident happened 3 weeks ago. Did London do enough 3 weeks later, or what could they have done to prevent something like this?
Look, it's not an issue of if UK authorities can, over a week or even over a few months, change the whole strategy. It's going to take time. As I said a little bit earlier, it looks like if the case is terrorism, we need to have more information. Then in this case, what they have discovered is the weak spot. So what the UK and our allies in Europe needs to do is to change the strategy. How can they spot these radicals way before they make that decision, i.e. the terrorist or the violent extremist, to make that decision? When can we intercept them? Because it looks like over the past few cases, we weren't able to intercept them. The UK or in France were not able to intercept them. This is going to trigger a full review of how Europeans and us as well here in North America need to address this threat.
I imagine social media is a big deal in terms of intercepting these. What more do we need to be doing on the social media front? You have these pods of people going in with all of their hate and with ISIS, and even when it comes to politics, we've seen social media become huge and causing a lot of problems even here in the U.S. What do we need to do there?
No, I agree with you fully. Social media is the new battlefield, is where you have a lot of space for these radicals to further radicalize or for these radicals to recruit and radicalize others. So it is very important now that not just we engage in counterterrorism in the cyberspace, but in the world of ideas, in detecting what network, who is radicalizing these individuals. Usually this phase is not under our laws. We need probably new laws. We need to have a discussion in the European Parliament, British Parliament, French, and also in Congress. What can we do to intercept them way before they start to radicalize? How can we stop that? Is going to be the big question. Otherwise, these networks are going to be growing, radicalizing. We have no way to intercept them until they attack, unless we are lucky, unless our law enforcement, and we have to give credit to law enforcement who are stopping a lot of these. But just a few could create the havoc, could create this psychological effect. It's a very tough battle.
Well, you're exactly right. This is not just a UK problem. This is a worldwide problem that we all need to get behind. ISIS is a problem for everyone. If you are just joining us and you're expecting to see Next Revolution with Steve Hilton, we have breaking news coming out of London. We're going to pause for a moment. We'll go to Steve Hilton at some point. He's talking with us about what's happening here in London. But I want to get you up to speed. If you're just joining us here on Fox News, one arrested, several people injured, possibly even killed after a vehicle hit pedestrians in London. Let's go to Sky News. They're following this closely. Let's dip into that right now.
The situation is much more calm right now. The people are dispersed. Police is still around. They isolated the entire area, the entire road. There are about 15 police cars in here, probably more. That's what I can see from the angle of my window. There's a lot of ambulances as well, but they're left. I think there's just one left now here. They're gone now. The police is still around talking to some people who live in an area nearby, and in the corner where the accident happened, or if it was an accident, I don't know, it's calm now. There are some people injured still on the floor that's being treated, but doesn't seem to be anything too bad. It was really, really ugly before. I could see at least 2 people on the floor not moving, and police officers trying to, doing cardiac massage on them.
Okay, we
don't
want
want
to...
very tense to watch.
Okay, so there seems to be the picture that you sent in, Cynthia, we're showing to our viewers now. There seem to be a lot of people there. It seems interesting that at 20 past midnight, there were a lot of people on the streets. Is that normal for that area of town?
Oh, what happens is that this is a very mixed community. So we have people from so many different countries and different cultures as well. So we have a church in one corner, an evangelic church in another, and a mosque around the road. So, and everybody lives fine, is always being fine. I've been living here for 3 years now, and it's always fine. And what they usually do, because it's right in front of my window, I'm so used to see them. Some of the Muslim people, when they leave the mosque after the prayers, they just gather in this corner and talk for a bit in the evening before they go home. And now it's Ramadan, so I'm guessing there's usually more than them for a little bit longer because it's Ramadan, obviously, so they stay outside for a bit longer. But nothing ever happens. There's never that many people anyway. So I think maybe, because when I looked through the window before and they're shouting and screaming, and I saw some people sitting on the floor with their head between their hands, it was really horrible to see. So I'm guessing that maybe this person who ran over, they maybe hit some of these Muslims. They're just left the mosque, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, we have the only confirmation we have from police is that they were called to reports of a vehicle in collision with pedestrians. So, Cynthia, perhaps you can just recap what happened. What did you see when this incident happened initially? You were in bed, you say?
I was in bed, so I wasn't looking. I had my curtains closed, so I couldn't see anything before. When I looked through the window, it had already happened, and I just saw the people shouting.
So you were woken up, Cynthia. So were you asleep at the time, or were you woken up by the shouts?
Sorry?
Were you asleep at the time?
No, I wasn't asleep, but I was about to sleep, like lights off and everything.
So you heard the shouting. Is that what made you go to the window? Can you just explain what you heard and what you saw, perhaps?
Just a lot of shouting. I couldn't really recognize any words, but I could recognize police, and there was a police car far away in Finsbury Park, and I could see they trying to get police attention. And in a matter of seconds, that police car was here. They probably called for support, and in another few seconds, so many police cars arrived. They were very quick, very fast.
So that was Cynthia. She lives just opposite that road, and she was explaining to us what she saw after this incident on Finsbury Road. So just an update from TfL Traffic News, that's Transport for London Traffic News, and they say that Seven Sisters Road is closed northbound at Hornsey Road and southbound at Rock Street. They're saying due to a police incident, which is this incident, and the road will be closed for some time. Now, Sky News does have a producer on the scene who says that we can confirm the incident happened as worshippers were leaving the Finsbury Park Mosque after midnight prayers during this holy month of Ramadan. There's 1 week left of Ramadan. Muslims tend to have an extra prayer at about midnight. So worshippers were leaving Finsbury Park Mosque when this happened. There are armed police on the scene. That's according to our producer, who is also on the scene. So police say that there are a number of casualties. They were being worked on at the scene. That was the latest update we got from the police. And they also said that one person has been arrested. We are monitoring the situation, and we will, of course, bring you all the latest lines as soon as we get them. Well, moving on.
All right, so you were just listening to our sister network, Sky News, and she was giving us a breakdown of what happened there in London. If you were just joining us now, we're following breaking news out of North London, where a vehicle has veered into a crowd of pedestrians. It happened about 12:20 on Monday morning. We're getting reports from police, several people injured, and possible casualties there. We don't have a lot of information. That's really all about police are giving us right now. But we do know it happened. London, it's about 2 o'clock there now. So it happened about 2 hours ago. We were just listening to a witness there on Sky News saying when it did happen, she saw two people on the ground. Of course, a lot of bystanders standing there with their head in between their hands, screaming, yelling, not sure what to make of all of this. You may remember 3 weeks ago, we saw what seemed to be something quite similar on the London Bridge when a van veered through a very crowded bridge, killing people. 3 guys got out of that van and they had knives and they went to Borough Market and started stabbing people. 8 people in total dead, other people injured as well. So people are on high alert there in London after that. Now 3 weeks later we have this. I want to be clear that we don't know any of the background on this. All we do know is that one person is arrested and several people injured, possible casualties that are being reported. We're working on getting that number for you if that is in fact true. But this happening in North London about 2 hours ago. So we're closely following that. And our sister network, Sky News, was saying this was happening after worshippers were coming out of a mosque. It's still Ramadan there. So there was a group of people coming out of there. We have Steve Hilton on the phone. Steve, I understand that you lived in London for a short time and you know that area there in North London quite well. What was the neighborhood it was in? I'm looking for my notes here. Finsbury Park, you know that area.
Yeah, it's a very well-known area because of the mosque that's there at the heart of it, Finsbury Park Mosque, where there was probably one of the most notorious in the language that we used at the time, preachers of hate ever to have been on the scene in the UK, Abu Hamza. That he was based at that mosque, the Finsbury Park Mosque in this area. I did in fact live pretty close to that part of town for many years. It's a very mixed area, like so much of London. It's one of the things that's great about London is it's very cosmopolitan. You've got people from all over the world, and this part of the city is very much like that. You've got, just as in the area where the terrible fire happened this week, you've got people of vastly different incomes living very closely side by side. It's mixed in every way. London is a very integrated city in that sense. Not in every way, but it's certainly integrated in the sense that you have people of different backgrounds, different incomes, all living very close by each other. And so that's really what that neighborhood is like.
That Sky News just spoke with, that posted something on social media. If we can get back to that photo, you can see the crowd there. Have you been able to see this photo at all? Is this indicative of just how many people are usually there, say around midnight, or is that just because it's Ramadan, right outside of the mosque? Have you seen that photo?
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that would be the reason. I mean, look, it's busy inner city areas. It's pretty close to it's in the heart of London, and there are late night shops, and so you'd expect to see people around. Certainly at the time this happened, which I think it was, are we saying midnight London time? So I think that's not unusual to have people around there at that time. Not at all.
And that area, you said there are shops, wide streets, at least what we're looking at the video here. It appears to have big, wide streets, big city streets. Is that what we're talking about?
Oh, yeah. This is very much a part of the inner city. You've got football stadium nearby. It's a busy part of not right in the heart of London, but it's pretty would be described as central London. Lots of people around. I mean, I think that if that is exactly what we're hearing, which is that this was right by or even happened outside a mosque, then you'd expect to see more people than usual right now because of Ramadan. But even without that, there'd be lots of people around at that time.
All right, Steve Hilton, host of Next Revolution. If you're just tuning in now, you're expecting to see Steve there on Next Revolution. We're following breaking news out of North London, where a vehicle has veered into a crowd of people. We do know one person is arrested, several injured, possible casualties. We're following that very closely. This coming just 3 weeks after we had a massive car into crowds there on London Bridge, and a stabbing as well, killing 8 people. A lot of people on edge. On the phone right now, we have Danny Coulson, former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI. Danny, thank you for joining us, and I'm sorry it has to be on such grim circumstances, it sounds like.
Oh, me too. That's quite a tragedy. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I want everyone at home to know we don't have any more details than what we're saying right now. We know one person arrested, possible casualties, people injured. Sky News is saying this happened outside of a mosque. It was a very busy time with Ramadan. That's about all that we have. And we're also working off of what happened 3 weeks ago when we saw the car go into pedestrians on London Bridge and the stabbing. So working off of all of that, of course, people have their senses heightened that this might be terrorism. What are your thoughts when you turned on the TV and saw this?
It's no doubt it's terrorism. What else would it be?
Right.
London is under siege, and they're under significant attack. I heard one of the guests say that London is one of the most integrated cities in the world. It's not. It's balkanized. And a lot of these radical Islamist fighters go into these areas, and they don't assimilate. They balkanize. There are areas of London where the police don't go now. And you have an unarmed police department, a police force primarily, and you have private citizens who aren't armed. And, try to defend yourself against a man who has a dagger. And I taught defensive tactics. I tell you, I can't do it. So these people are helpless to these type of attacks, and especially when they're of a surprise nature, where somebody drives a van up and jumps out and starts stabbing people. And England's got to get its act together here, and they've got to decide what they're going to do about these people and make some hard decisions. And if there's a balkanized area, a no-go zone, then they ought to send the SAS in there and clean it out and make it a go zone. And I think the world has not woken up to the fact that we are at war. And these guys wage war on Muslims just like they do everybody else in the world. So it's a radicalized portion of the Islamic religion, and they attack everybody. If you don't agree with them, they kill you. And it's scary, and people, I live in a state where everybody's armed, and we don't have those kind of attacks. And I'm not saying arm everybody in England, but they need to rethink about arming their police and whether or not private citizens have the right to be armed.
All right, this is Danny Coulson. He's former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI. He's on the phone right now. Danny, so 3 weeks, this is happening 3 weeks after we had the attack on the London Bridge. Should residents there in London expect more? Should they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 3 weeks, you would imagine, or you would hope that something could have stopped this 3 weeks later. Not that that's a heck of a lot of time, but
you know what? I think that the intelligence services in England and a lot of the rest of the world are overwhelmed. There's too many people there that are like thinkers that agree with these type of attacks, and it makes it very, very difficult to stop it. And it's like the shooting we had with regard to the congressional baseball game. How do we stop that? Be prepared for it. Mm-hmm. And there's no way you can get into the minds of a crazy man, or you can get into the minds of people who want to create mayhem, and they're based on their form of religion. But you know what? Sometimes we have to take care of ourselves. And, you know, the police are minutes away, but seconds matter. And private citizens need to be ready for this kind of thing and be alert. Clearly, if you see a truck driving down the sidewalk, that's not a good thing. You know, get the heck out of there and run away. And let me say this. Most people don't believe it's happening. And they stand there and they watch it in disbelief, and they get killed for it. And if I could give one piece of advice to you and anybody else I talk to, is believe it's happening and then take action. Run, get away.
Yeah. No, it's a good piece of advice. I got to tell you, I struggle with this all the time when I think I don't want to live in this mindset of it could happen at any time to me. You get really overwhelmed with it. But the reality is these people that were coming out of a mosque, they were worshiping, having a great night. Who would have imagined that this would have happened? But like you said, you have to believe it when you see it's happening. So how do you get away from being completely paranoid all the time?
That's a great question, and the answer to that is, do you wear a seatbelt? If you wear a seatbelt, does that make you paranoid? And there are people about how to deal in an active shooter situation. Talk to your family about what to do in a situation like this. Don't stand there with your eyes bugged out. Get out of there. Run as fast as hard as you can, because what you're trying to do here is buy space between you and the onslaught, and that's about the only way you can defend yourself unless you are harmed in some way.
So true. Just such a new way of life that, I never really put in perspective the whole seatbelt. But you're right. This is our new way of life. We have to start figuring out how we're going to deal with it mentally and physically. All right, Danny Colson, thank you so much
Thank you, ma'am.
for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's go to our sister network, Sky News, dip into their coverage.
It happened as worshippers were leaving the Finsbury Park Mosque. We are, of course, in the holy month, the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, so this would have been after the midnight Ramadan Taraweeh prayers. That's the TfL, they've also updated and say that Seven Sisters Road is closed, northbound at Hornsey Road and southbound at Rock Street, and that the road will be closed for some time. So we'll bring you all the latest from that incident in Finsbury Park as when we get it. Well, moving on now in detail.
You were just listening to our sister network. We're going back and forth so you can listen a little bit of what they're covering there. On the phone now is former CIA covert. Do we have Mike Baker? Is he on the phone?
Yes, that would be me.
Good evening, Mike. Thanks for joining us in such awful circumstances. What do you make of all of this?
Well, yeah, it's like Groundhog Day, right? It's it's just one thing after. I agree with what Danny was saying. Just a few minutes ago, in terms of you've got to be aware, you've got to understand, the environment that you live in. But the problem is that nobody, including people in a war zone, are going to be on high alert all the time. You can't do it. It's not humanly possible.
Right.
So now, in the past, we would say, look, you go to a public space, into a transportation hub, to a concert, whatever. Be aware that you're in that sort of setting, and raise your alert level a little bit. But now we're talking about, individuals coming out of a mosque, people walking down Westminster Bridge or London Bridge. It's not possible if you're out on the street on a daily basis to be constantly aware of your environment. I'm just telling you,
it's completely overwhelming.
Yeah, it's completely overwhelming. It's not really a new world order in the sense that people in Iraq, they've been living for a long time. This is the sort of thing that they're used to. They know they walk into the market and that place could be lit up at any time, and suddenly you've got dozens of people killed. This is the sort of thing that they have been dealing with in other parts of the world, and now it's come to roost in a place like the UK, and that's why it causes us so much angst and stress, is because it's not something we can process quickly or readily.
If you're just joining us, we're following breaking news out of London where one person is arrested. We're hearing several people dead. We're working on getting a number and confirming that for you, but we do know several people are injured. This is video that was taken shortly after the incident. The incident happened at 12:20 this morning, Monday morning in London. It's now a little after about 2:20 there in London. And there was a big crowd at the time. We're working on getting some live. Oh, this is live. This is what you can see right outside there in Finsbury Park. Our sister network, Sky News, saying that it happened outside of a mosque as worshipers were coming out. Steve, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it suggests that this is actually not the same thing as we've been used to. It's just as bad, of course, in its horrific impact on individual people, on how scared it will make people feel about going about their daily lives. The terror component of it is as bad and frankly the same as we've seen, but the attack itself doesn't look like it's the same. It looks like it's the opposite of what we've seen because of where it is and who might have been the target. We don't know that for sure yet, but it doesn't feel like it's a repeat.
It's that vehicle attack that really gets people on edge. Is that the van, I think, is what we're talking. You know, we keep seeing the van over and over, it seems like, running into people, and that's what I'm referring to. It's just that's the frightening part of it all. And it also is now, it seems like an attack on religion. Like you're saying, this is slightly different than what we saw with the London Bridge, you know, in that regard, for sure.
But it really is, you know, the word terror is exactly right. Is exactly the right word for what's going on here, and actually it goes back a long way. I mean, we saw it with Nice back in back last year. You know, this is not the casualties there were much greater than the. In fact, it's now the third vehicle-based attack in the UK, because the Westminster Bridge one a couple of months ago was a vehicle as well, and then you had London Bridge and now this. Although the nature of this one feels a bit different, but I mean the underlying issue is the same, which is we've just got so much hate on all sides here, and it always seems to be something that is connected with a particular religion, and there's an ideology associated with that religion which is driving hate, and it looks like this may be a response to that. We don't know, but there's a really, really big long-term problem. And I think that we've been reluctant to confront that. And it's not just a question of immediate security precautions, although those are vital, and we need to see more of that. And I've been critical of the British government's response to this in the past. And I think we do need to see, and people do need they have a right to expect from their leaders a tough and strong response, and more security. That's the prime responsibility of government in the end. That is the one thing that you really, really expect your government, whether that's at the national level or even at the local level, to get right, which is protect your security. So I think there's more that can be done, and people will be asking a lot of questions around that. But of course, as we say, every